What is the best time for an integration team to get involved in the M&A process? Now, I know different companies deploy different strategies, but the ones that we've seen to be most effective is the one that I'm going to share with you in today's video. Hi there, my name is Anirvan Sen. I'm an author, CEO, builder of high performance business, and creator of Promise of a Business framework. So welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about what's the right time for the integration team to get involved in the M&A process. Now, I'm going to lay it out for you all the stages of an M&A for you to get a good understanding. So one of the things that you need to keep in mind, it again depends on the size of the business you're in. If you are in a mega business, Fortune 500 business, then they obviously have an army of people who can be deployed. But in general, for the acquisitions, M&A activities that are in the sub $250 million, either SMEs or lower end of the mid cap market or mid end of the mid cap market, the work of integration often overlaps with the work of the operations. And that's why we often see that operations people double up as integration resources at the time of integration. So let's start with the stages first. So, right at the beginning of a business strategy setting, that's where the first time we believe that the operations team need to get involved so that they can provide their aspiration, they can provide their operational design that they would expect from a target company. So that's literally the first stage when operations would give their input on what kind of companies would they be looking for. Now, I know many companies just rely on the CEO or the COO or the CFO, or maybe sometimes the CTO to design this piece, but often they miss out on the operations. And as you know, operating models are the new competitive advantage levers that must be used. And that's why we say operations people needs to get involved right up front at the business strategy. And this is what we call aspirations of the operations. The second stage is when there is a selection. This is known as the target selection stage. In this stage, the operations team is supposed to look at different companies and give their preference on the companies they believe at a very high level that could be a good fit from an operations perspective. So that's your second stage, which is target selection. The third stage is when we conduct a detailed evaluation, and that's a combination of due diligence, risk evaluation, operations evaluation, process evaluation, and this is where the operations team gets more actively involved. Once the due diligence is conducted and it is decided to go forward, this is where the preliminary integration design work needs to start. After that, once the deal gets signed off and the period between the deal signing off and the actual change of ownership, the integration kicks in into an active status. This is where most of the detailed design of integration that needs to be conducted. Once you've reached the day of change of ownership, the day one as we call it, that's when the actual integration implementation starts. This may last anywhere between 100 days to 180 days, 4 to 6 months is the usual bit. 100 days is used for essentially the first 3 to 4 months of activities. Once that's done, this is when the next stage and the final stage of integration kicks in, and we call it the integration optimization and the integration innovation stage. So this is where you have started working with a new company and you get together and you start identifying new opportunities, new solutions, etc. Right. Now, you may ask, so when does the integration team get involved in the process, right? So I've given you the way operations team get involved. Now, typically, if the operations people are doubling up as integration resources, these are the people who need to get involved at the business strategy stage. Now, if there are integration people, there is a dedicated integration team which works very closely with the operations as well as with the corporate development team. We believe the most preferred place for them is during the due diligence stage, once the target selection is done and the company wants to evaluate more. Prior to that, the operations team can primarily provide the input that's required for target selection and for the business strategy. And when does the integration team taper off? Now, as I mentioned, the 180 days is the period when the integration is at its most active stage. After that, largely things taper off and it is handed over to the operations. Now, again, as an integration team, this is when you may decide either to completely disband the team after that stage has been attained, which is the crossover from integration to integration optimization or integration innovation. Some of the people may continue during that period. For example, in the cases of long tail integration, where system integrations, which are complicated integrations, they need more time, or let's say revenue synergies, which is part of integration, it may take time, or cultural integration that take time. These are the aspects that needs to be looked at, and this is what decides the longevity of an integration. So ideally speaking, you start getting involved during the due diligence stage, and you kind of wrap up by the time it's about 180 days after the day one. So roughly that's what I would say that integration team needs to be involved in the M&A process. Now, obviously, I discounted of the large scale integration. In large scale integration, integration often run into a couple of years. So you may have what is known as a TSA, which is the Transition Services Agreement, where large company is being transitioned to their new owners. And there's a lot more complication in the way processes are run. There is a lot more separation to do, and that's where it takes longer. But otherwise, it's from due diligence to about 180 days post day one, after the active integration phase is done with. So hopefully you found value in this video, and if you did, please do share it with your friends and colleagues and help us spread awareness on the subject by sharing this as well as subscribing to our channel. And with that, we end today's video session. Till next time, here is Promise of a Business.